Hey guys. So I'm not going to delete my latest video on the Becoming the Woman of His Dreams chapter 11 and 12 because we're going through a book study and I did a video. It's fine. It's there. I can't go and correct every single little thing I don't like because then it's just more time consuming. But I will say, just being super real, I watched it and I didn't like the way I sounded in it. I think that I didn't make it when I should have waited to make the video. Not because I didn't have my information gathered or I hadn't read it, but just because I know I'm hormonal right now and I have a tendency to just be more matter of fact, when I'm like this. And I can just tell in my tone and in my demeanor and in my just not gentleness in my speech. The way I delivered the video is not what I would have wanted. So there's been some discussion in the comment section that I'm sure the way I sounded in the video fed, but it's even if I had sounded beautiful and peaceful and kind and gentle, I think the same issues would still be issues with the people talking to me. I don't think that those would be resolved necessarily. But in watching the video to find out, like, what are these people referring to, I was like, I don't like the way I sound. And so I don't know if I would necessarily change any of the things I said, but I definitely would change the way I said them if I can go back and do it all over again. And I think that, I don't know, like, we're, it's gonna feel so nice or tempting because it sounds so fluffy and good to hear you feel that way. You go, you express that, and you know, you're entitled to feel that way. That's a lie from the world, you guys. Like, I don't care how much we wish we could express how we feel. Think about the times that you actually do feel a certain way, feel like you're entitled to feel that way, and you act on it. What satisfaction comes from that? None. All you do is harm people you love, harm people you care about, right? No satisfaction will ever result from feeling a negative way, feeling like you're entitled to feel that way, and then acting on it against someone. And you know, no matter how much we talk about it, the world is never going, never going to make any sense to the world that we are called to be humble. We are called to be meek. We're called to be loving and patient. We're called to forgive. We're called to love our enemies. It's like the contrary to everything that's human nature, right? Is Christianity. So there's only so much you can talk about with people. So I know the chapter's a little heavy. It's about forgiving. And, you know, there are so many scenarios. There's no way to go over every single little scenario known under the sun that could happen in a marriage. Of course not. But in general, generally speaking, we need, always, we need to forgive. That doesn't mean that, you know, no other actions need or can take place. You can, you know, for lack of a better way to just explain this, let me give a scenario. You can be in an abusive relationship and need to separate because you're in danger and you need to get out of there, and not necessarily stay with the husband and go back to him forever. None of that, but still forgive him. What is forgiveness? It's not carrying that grudge in your heart for the rest of your life, not making him pay for it. Just separate, move on with your life, but forgive, you know? And that is what's right and honorable and obedient to the Lord. So, yeah, forgiveness is a command. We are to forgive. He has, you know, we need to understand that Christ has made the ultimate sacrifice and forgiven us of everything if we believe. And we are to model Christ, and we are never more like Christ than when we forgive. So, forgive doesn't mean excuse every scenario that you can possibly imagine, every horrible scenario. Sorry, my little one was calling me. So, forgiveness doesn't mean excusing people, excusing wrong behavior or wrong done to you. Well, I guess it does mean excusing it. It doesn't mean living with it if it's horrible, like if it's something that could hurt you, verbal abuse or physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of the, just these things. That doesn't mean sit there, be a doormat, and just take it all. Of course not. That's not what forgiveness means. Forgiveness is a heart issue, and your actions demonstrate your heart, right? So if you're bitter, it's going to show in your actions. If you're resentful, it's going to show in your actions. If you're unforgiving, it's going to show in your actions. And if you're forgiving, it's going to show in your actions. That doesn't mean you have to be best friends, So as far as marriage goes, when I say tiny offenses, I'm referring to stupid stuff, you guys. And I hope that you would think it's stupid too. The stuff that we talk about, were like leaving the toilet paper unfilled, or leaving socks on the floor, or, the sleeping bag scenario that I gave today, or, the lady in the book with the suitcase being forgotten to be put away, anything like that you would hopefully love your spouse enough and care about your marriage enough that you wouldn't let something so little interfere with your marriage. I'm talking about stuff like that. And then there's going to be emotional offenses. There's going to be insensitivity. There's going to be lack of consideration. There's going to be lack of respect. There's going to be snappy comebacks. There's going to be quick to become anger. There's going to be hopefully, that now we're getting into the dangerous, the worst stuff, lying, betrayal. Those things are big, financial stuff done against you. Like those are the big things. And we're called to forgive all of them, right? When, I can't remember which apostle it was, asking Jesus, if my neighbor offends me, or how often should I forgive him? Jesus says 70 times 7. That, in other words, indefinitely, always forgive him. Always forgive him. Every single time he offends you, forgive him every time. And then when we're called to communion, it says to make sure that you're not holding any bitterness between another brother, or that you haven't asked for forgiveness from a brother in the Lord before you take communion, because you need to be at peace, right? That doesn't mean, like I said, you're going to be buddy-buddy with somebody. I have people in my life that have greatly offended me. They're no longer in my life because I can't have them in my life because they bring nothing but destruction. But I have forgiven them, and I haven't seen them in 13 years, but I have forgiven them. I don't sit around with that grudge festering. Think about what that does to your soul. Think about what lack of forgiveness does to your soul, to your heart. Do you think that's healthy? Or do you think that's poison? When it just seems like everything that God commands us to do is good for us. It just is. Forgiving frees you. It frees you. God says, vengeance is mine. Let him deal with it. Let him carry that. You forgive and move on. And so that is just what it is, you guys. And if you don't like it, sorry, take it up with God. I am just going to say that's what Scripture calls us to do. Forgive. And this book, it's okay so far. I like it. It's not as meaty and rich as The Excellent Wife, but it still has a lot of good things to offer. I like it. It's spot on, I think. I haven't disagreed with anything in it. But it's been hard to make videos on it, I guess. And you know what? This might just be all the hormones. I may just be thinking too much about all of this because I'm a girl and I have emotions. And sometimes they're irrational. So, anyway, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. And I did chat with somebody else in the comments about like all divorce stems from unaddressed sin. When I say that, I'm not saying the wife's unaddressed sin. I'm saying somebody's unaddressed sin. So if the husband's the one cheating and he doesn't stop, or if the husband's the one lying and he doesn't address his sin and fight it and get it out of his life, or if the husband's the one, doing something sinful and he doesn't fight his sin and he just lets his sin run its course, it's going to destroy everything in its path and it's going to ultimately destroy his marriage. Same exact thing for the wife. If the wife is the one with bitterness or resentment or whatever sin, fill in the blank, husband or wife, fill in the blank. Whoever has the sin, which we're all sinners, we all have sin, but if we don't nip that sin and mortify it every single day and we just let it grow and grow and grow and let it run its course, it's going to destroy everything in its path. So, yes, divorce results from unaddressed sin, whether it be the husband's unaddressed sin or the wife's unaddressed sin. And chances are it's going to end up both of their unaddressed sin along there somewhere in that path. It's going to get tangled up because let's just take this example. If the husband is a really, really, you know, undisciplined spender and he's just being foolish and spending money like crazy, and the wife brings it to his attention and she's like, please don't do this. We can't afford the rent. We can't afford our utilities. You're stressing me out. I'm starting to struggle with bitterness and resentment and lack of trust in you because you're just like throwing our money away. And he doesn't take that and say, you're right, let's be responsible and frugal. Let me obey God and provide for you and be a good steward of my money and stop. If he just continues on in that bad, sinful pattern, well, then the wife's probably going to get bitter and resentful, and there her sin starting. And if she doesn't address that, there goes both of their sin going crazy together. And, so chances are it's never just one person, it's always both. But it's unaddressed sin. You can fill in the blank with any scenario. So I hope that makes more sense. I don't ever want to make it sound like it's all the wife's fault. Of course not. That would be completely illogical. And then the other thing that keeps on coming up in a lot of videos, I don't know what the deal is with people wanting me to talk to husbands. I'm not going to talk to husbands. We're reading a marriage book that is written to wives. Why am I going to talk about husbands? It just doesn't make any sense. People just want to bash men. I'm not going to sit around bashing hypothetical men. I'm going to read the book and we're going to talk about how it applies to us and our lives and how it might help us, So it doesn't mean that, if a woman reaches out to me and she shares with me what's going on in her heart and what her husband's doing, that I'm not going to validate her feelings about what's going on if she's right in her feelings. If she's wrong in her feelings, then I'll definitely lovingly encourage her and help her to see that. But if the husband's doing something foolish, I might say something like, your husband's in the wrong, but that's not our focus here. Because what is that going to do? Nothing helpful. So let's say, yes, I acknowledge he's in the wrong. I am so sorry you're going through this. Now let's focus on what we need to focus on, and that is, what are you going to do and how are you going to handle this in a way that honors God and doesn't bring more damage? That's my approach, and I hope and think that that is the biblical approach and the most helpful approach. There's nothing helpful about, yeah, he's a moron, let's all, there's nothing helpful about that. So I hope, because all that does is help the wife become more bitter and more bitter and more bitter. And how is that helpful? How is that helpful? It's not. So I really just had to get all of this off my chest. And I'm so thankful that my YouTube friends, I can share that with you. So forgive me if I offended you. Forgive me if I came on too strong. I'm not going to delete it. In fact, I'll title this part 2 so that you can watch this one as part 2. And just have grace on me. I'm human, you guys, and I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes, and I come across too strong sometimes, and that's a big struggle of mine. And I need grace just like the next person, you know? So thanks for watching this. Have a great night.